Okay, so can we all disagree that this is kind of a mess of a title? Ignoring the absolute majesty that is this work of art. If this title was a title to like a movie, would you watch it? Better yet, if this was a title to a YouTube video, would you click on it? But if you actually translate Clair Obscur, it means chiaroscuro, which is basically an Italian art technique that emphasizes light and dark colors. And yeah, if you played a game, that kind of ties into some of the themes of the game, but you're not gonna get that from just looking at the title alone. Do I look like a French or an Italian person to you? I took French in high school. I remember Jack from that. And most people aren't gonna translate your title just to understand it better. And yet, this is one of the most popular games of this year, on track to winning Game of the Year even. And for a game under a new IP developed by a completely unknown studio, that's really unheard of. But by positive reception and by word of mouth, this game with a bunch of French adjectives and numbers has become a household name. For gamers. I mean, I don't know about the whole house, but the rooms where the gamers are playing their games, it's become a household name for them. And that seems to be the case for a lot of games nowadays. I mean, a game can be called like the most boring or most complex mixture of words, letters, numbers, adjectives, whatever, and gamers will still come for the gameplay. But that hasn't always been the case. For example, Pac-Man. My dad's ears just perked up a little bit when I said that, because he's like, oh, I know that game. I played as a kid. Anyway, Pac-Man is a great example of a popular game title that describes what the game is, and is also a genuinely catchy name for a game. Think about this. You were a kid in the 80s going to an arcade, because arcades are pretty much extinct now unless you're going to like a Dave & Buster's or a Chuck E. Cheese or whatever. And you come across this game cabinet called Pac-Man. Now, one, a lot of superheroes have man in their name, so you already kind of have this sense of familiarity by seeing the name Pac-Man. And two, that's just generally describes what's going on in the arcade game. You have this little dot packing its mouth, but even smaller dots, and eating like fruits, and goes sometimes to eat the slightly bigger dots. But dots that aren't like as big as the dot that's eating the other dots itself, but like, you know, it's like the right amount size to show you that this pellet is more important than the other ones. I'm getting way too deep into semantics of Pac-Man. You get what I'm trying to say with this. The same thing can be said for a more recent game, Peak, where the title itself is actually the reason why a lot of people even played the game. Now, for the older people, my audience, I know you're in there somewhere. When a young person describes something as peak, they mean it's good. You know, this food was peak, this movie was peak, this show was peak, this game was peak. So when you call your game Peak, you better be willing to follow that up. And technically the developers do, because in Peak, you're literally climbing the peak of a mountain. So it's literally describing what you're doing in the game. And it's also like a pretty, like, it's a pretty fun game. I've had a lot of fun playing this game. Going back to a more old school title, Star Fox is another great game that kind of describes what's going on. So you've heard of Star Wars, right? I think most people in the world probably know what that is. But in Star Wars, it's got all these guys flying in space and these like fighter jets shooting guns and lasers at each other and all that stuff. And Star Fox is basically that, but with furries. And it just so happens that the main character is a fox, so pretty self-explanatory. Where we get into some issues though is Star Fox's more popular cousin, Super Mario. Now, Super Mario is a household name for the entire house, for gamers and their moms. So it's kind of hard to think of the title Super Mario without thinking of the giant IP that's associated with it. But if you really break down its name, Super Mario, like, what does that even mean? Who is Mario and why is he so super? I guess he's technically super because he gets these power-ups that give him his superpowers, but you wouldn't know that unless you played the games. But even then, that doesn't explain why he always goes go-karting, or why he plays so many sports, or why he hosts so many parties that make even Diddy Kong blush. And I know these are ridiculous conclusions to come to. I mean, it's Mario, right? Don't think about it too much. But wouldn't it be fair for a kid to question why Mario is so super just by looking at that title? And yeah, sure, a kid who asks that question can get the answer to that mystery by just playing the game. So free marketing for Nintendo, I guess. Another popular Nintendo title that's popular because its name elicits mystery in the lore or whatever is The Legend of Zelda. But if you play the original Legend of Zelda, Zelda is barely in it. Heck, you don't even play as her. You play as this random guy. Which I know Link is not Zelda. That's like one of the oldest like memes on the internet or whatever. But won't that confuse a newcomer if all they knew about Zelda was the title? But I'll give Zelda this though. What it lacks in title accuracy, it makes up for it in its subtitles. A Link to the Past. Not only describing the character you actually play as, but it hints at a time travel mechanic in a fantasy game. And you know, time travel is usually associated with sci-fi. So like it adds a little bit more, I guess, depth to what's going on in this game by like saying, oh, like, time travel's in it. I don't know. The same thing can be said with Ocarina of Time. Well, gee, I don't know what an ocarina is, but that sounds pretty cool. Says literally millions of players that collectively agree that this is one of the greatest games of all time. Wind Waker. Again, don't know what a waker is, but it sounds pretty important. And I gotta respect that alliteration. And then you have Twilight Princess. Ignoring my complicated feelings towards the game, it's not a bad game. I just don't like it very much. But that subtitle, man, Twilight Princess. What a cool, borderline eerie name for a game title that also evokes mystery and intrigue onto the player, which is very much needed after, you know, people were really dogging on this art style and general vibe of the previous game, Wind Waker, the one we just talked about. Too bad that title is attached to this game. And again, before you continue typing in your death threats for me having a not good opinion about Twilight Princess, I still like the game. It's a good game. It's just that its problems outweigh its strengths for me personally. Too much Ocarina of Time pandering and aura farming for my taste. But I still think it's a great game, better than most modern games. Oh, speaking of which, let me set the stage for you real quick. So you're watching E3 when that was still a thing, as a teenager between the ages of 14 and 16. So you're about 15 years old, and you see this amazing, beautiful trailer with these people fighting these robot dinosaur monsters with a bow and arrow. And you're thinking like, wow, this is like the most incredible game thing I've ever seen in my life. What would you even call such a thing? And as if the game trailer heard you, it decides to reveal its title to you as Horizon Zero Dawn. Horizon Zero Dawn. They decided to call their game about you killing a bunch of robot dinosaurs with a bow and arrow as Horizon Zero Dawn. Like, am I like crazy, or is this just a terrible title for that type of game? Not only does this name have nothing to do with the actual game itself, it's literally just a bunch of random words kind of tied together to form this mess. I don't even know how to describe this. Now, okay, I can kind of give the Horizon a pass. It kind of like fits the general like nature against technology vibe that they're kind of going with. Where I start to have some issues is the Zero Dawn part over in this general area right here. Like that literally means nothing. Like, okay, I guess, okay, if I have to like really, you know, think about this, put a little extra brain power into why they called this game Zero Dawn or had that as a subtitle. I guess the zero means beginning, starting. And dawn means like a new day, which I guess kind of ties into the Horizon part. But like when you're having a game where you're fighting robot dinosaurs with a bow and arrow, I'm not thinking about this hippy dippy like nature versus technology theme going on. I'm thinking about killing these monsters, you know? So Zero Dawn literally just, that doesn't describe what's going on. And okay, if you played a game, Zero Dawn does actually have like a slight meaning in the game. Small spoilers for this 10-year-old game if you haven't played it yet. But Zero Dawn basically describes like a protocol in the game universe that describes like how humans combated these robot dinosaurs by like having like an artificial way for the nature to continue or whatever. But one, you don't find out what Zero Dawn means until the end of the game. And two, there's one of the answers to the mystery of like what's going on, sure, but like it doesn't describe what you're actually doing in the game. At least its sequel has a way better subtitle, Forbidden West. Like not only does that actually describe what we're doing, but it also adds a bit of mystery to the game. Like where in the West are we and why is it forbidden? But despite the really, really bad title of the first game, the Horizon franchise has been one of Sony and PlayStation's most profitable IPs. And that's in spite of both mainline games coming out around the same time as other games that redefine the open world game genre they're all in. By the way, Elden Ring, pretty cool title. Very much like George or Tolkien-esque. Breath of the Wild, Great game, one of my favorites of all time even. But when I think of that title, I just kind of think of Morning Breath. Despite both games being above average Ubisoft open world games, and I say that out of love. Sony has pretty much shoved these games down people's throats with a bunch of marketing and sales. They practically forced the Horizon series to be a household name for them, despite, again, the terrible name of the first game. The same can't be said for other decent games with bad titles. Immortals of Aveum is another game with a bad title, but also a good game with a bad title. It basically makes magic with traditional FPS mechanics, but it sold poorly, possibly due to that confusing title and EA just not pushing out the game, which unfortunately led to the studio being shut down. This isn't the first time EA didn't push out a banger title. Titanfall 2, which admittedly isn't like the most egregious name for a game, and compared to these two titles over here, Titanfall 2 is as identifiable as Mickey Mouse Clubhouse. But Titanfall 2 was a phenomenal first-person shooter, and it shook up the genre by giving you this giant mech suit and had a very enjoyable single-player campaign that was very reminiscent of a Saturday morning cartoon. But the game failed due to EA having the genius idea of releasing Titanfall 2 between its own Battlefield and the latest Call of Duty game, which I don't need to explain, but Call of Duty and Battlefield were pretty much the big two of the FPS genre, so Titanfall 2 pretty much got eaten alive. But the Titanfall franchise did survive through Apex Legends, which is like a battle royale kind of game. But Apex Legends is also like a pretty bad title, and it's just two adjectives that don't really connect. It's just very generic, but I mean, I don't know, it's a fun game. I like Apex Legends. But yeah, I think I'm gonna wrap it up here. If you take anything away from this video, it's that Expeditionary 3 is peak, and you should definitely play it. And if it doesn't win Game of the Year this year, there might be some riots. You know, there might be some riots out there in the street. This isn't a threat. This is not a threat. Just a light warning, Jeff. So you know, make sure this game gets Game of the Year, or your car might get keyed. But if we learned anything from this video, is that a game can have a crappy title, but it doesn't matter if the game itself is good. That, or if it's really loved by the publisher, otherwise you're pretty much screwed. But the fact that gamers love games for the gameplay and not the title is a good thing. It gives developers the opportunity to focus on, you know, the quality of the actual game itself, and not like, you know, marketing or coming up with a catchy title. I actually experienced this myself a few years ago with a game called Xenoblade Chronicles. Now, if 15-year-old me saw this title, I probably would have ran away out of fear. But if it wasn't for my friends convincing me that this was a good game, this game with a weird anime title would have become one of my favorite games of all time. Speaking of anime, games may have some weird titles, but it has nothing on anime. Like, some of these animes have like the most complex or most bland or generic titles, and they're still like one of the most popular like things of all time. So like, games have not gotten there yet, but you know, good for anime. Anyway, thank you for watching this mess of a video. You know, like the video if you liked it, dislike if you didn't. Comment below about why I'm wrong about my Twilight Princess opinions. Or if you want to, you know, have me actually talk to you and have like a little bit of dialogue, just join the Discord server, man. Just join the Discord. Not only do you get to yell at me for things you don't like about what I've been saying in these videos, but you can also get notified when I go live on my YouTube channel or on Twitch. Or, you know, just get future updates for my, you know, upcoming videos. Like this, if you want to support me, that's the best place to do it. Again, thank you for watching this video. More videos coming out soon. I always say that. See you in the next video. Bye.